I was a mistake, the result of my mother's reckless night with a stranger. If it weren't for the pressure from my grandparents, I might have never been born. But they forced my parents to get married, and 9 months later I arrived. Not as a joy, but as a life sentence. My father never hid his resentment toward me. "There goes my youth," he would mumble every time he looked at me, as if I had ripped him away from some grand life he deserved. My mother, though she never hit or yelled at me, never gave me a hug or a kind word either. To them, I wasn't their child. I was just a burden they were forced to carry. The first 10 years of my life revolved around a single rule: don't be a bother. I learned to walk softly, speak quietly, and disappear into the shadows of that small house. But no matter how careful I was, my very existence was a thorn in my father's side. Then, one day, the miracle of the family arrived. Ella, the golden child, the angel in my parents' eyes. Unlike me, Ella was welcomed with happy tears, warm embraces, and endless congratulations. From that moment on, I officially became the outsider, the servant in my own home. "Zoe, watch your sister." "Zoe, be quiet, Ella is sleeping." "Zoe, why can't you be more like Ella?" Ella got brand new clothes, I got hand-me-downs from distant relatives. Ella had birthday cakes, I had a candle stuck into a loaf of bread. Ella received hugs, I was met with silence. Once, I asked my mother, "Did I do something wrong?" She just sighed and said nothing, as if she didn't even want to acknowledge me. I learned to accept it, to stop expecting anything. But there was one thing I couldn't stop doing: dreaming. I learned to make myself invisible. If I stayed silent long enough, if I didn't make a fuss, if I disappeared, maybe my father wouldn't look at me with disgust, maybe my mother wouldn't sigh every time I spoke. But no matter how hard I tried, I was still just a shadow. A shadow whose only purpose was to serve this family. When I was 8, my mother handed me a mop and said, "From now on, you'll be cleaning the whole house." At first, it was just wiping tables and sweeping floors, but soon I was scrubbing, washing clothes, doing dishes, and handling any chore that needed small hands. By the time I was 10, my mother barely lifted a finger. "Zoe, the laundry isn't done." "Zoe, the kitchen floor is filthy, clean it again." "Zoe, make dinner." And just like that, I became the family's unpaid maid. Meanwhile, Ella lived a completely different life. My mother bought her pretty dresses, ordered cakes for her birthdays, and gave her new toys and dolls whenever she pointed at them in a store. I remember once, I dared to ask my mother for a new backpack because mine was falling apart. She looked at me like I had said something ridiculous. "Your backpack still works fine." A week later, Ella got a brand new pink backpack covered in glitter. But the worst part wasn't the gifts I never received. It was the way my mother looked at Ella with warmth. The way my father proudly patted her back whenever she brought home good grades. And me? I could clean the entire house, and no one would say thank you. I could cook dinner every night, and no one would even ask if I had eaten. Yet, no matter how abandoned I felt, I found one thing that made me feel valuable: cooking. The first time I made something on my own was when I was 9. It was just scrambled eggs, but I still remember the joy of watching the golden yolk melt onto the toast. Over time, I learned by watching my mother in the kitchen, memorizing every movement, experimenting whenever I had the chance. By the time I was 12, I could cook a full meal. I still remember the first time I made lasagna for the family dinner. When Ella took her first bite, she gasped, "Wow, this is so good!" My mother smiled, but not at me. She turned to my father and said, "I think I made it better this time. Don't you agree?" I wanted to scream, "I made it!" But then I remembered. I was just a shadow. And shadows don't get recognition. I clenched my fists. It's okay. One day, I would find a place where I belonged. A place where I no longer had to stand in the dark, waiting for someone to finally see me. I always knew my place in this family. I was the responsible one, the invisible child, the outsider to their lives. But that didn't mean I didn't have dreams. I wanted to be a chef, Not just someone who cooked meals in the corner of a family kitchen, but someone who created dishes people would remember. I spent hours after school watching cooking shows, writing down recipes, experimenting whenever I had the chance. I imagined one day, I would open my own restaurant. A place where people came because they loved the food I made. A place where I was no longer just a shadow. But when I dared to say that out loud, all I received was mockery. Open a restaurant? Who do you think you are, Gordon Ramsay? My father scoffed, shaking his head. Restaurants go bankrupt faster than you think. People might try your food once and forget about it the next day. Zoe, be realistic, my mother added, her voice as if I had just said I wanted to go to Mars. Why don't you get a normal job, accounting, secretarial work, teaching, something stable? And then, as always, Ella drove the knife in deeper. You could work at McDonald's. They need people who can cook too. They laughed. I clenched my teeth, swallowing the humiliation. I didn't know why, but despite their mockery, my father still agreed to pay for my culinary school. But he made it clear, this is all you're getting from me. Don't expect anything else. The house, the savings, everything goes to Ella. I should have felt hurt, but instead, I felt relieved. I didn't need anything from them. I just needed a chance. And I was about to get one. Culinary school was the first place in my life where I felt like I truly belonged. No one ignored me or compared me to Ella. There, talent was measured by the food you created, not by your last name. I stayed up late practicing, mastering knife skills, understanding flavors and how they blended. For the first time, I felt like I had value. I dreamed that after graduation, I would find a stable job and slowly build my own restaurant. But that dream crumbled quickly. No savings, nowhere to live. I had no choice but to go back home. And the moment I stepped inside, I knew nothing had changed. Zoe, you're a chef now, right? My mother's voice had a suspiciously cheerful tone. That means you'll be cooking every day from now on. You don't have anything more important to do you? Ella snickered. Yeah, at least now you can do something useful for the family. I didn't argue. There was nothing left to argue about. I just quietly hung my culinary diploma on the wall of my old bedroom. A cramped space with faded wallpaper and the same worn-out bed I had slept in since childhood. I had come so far, only to be dragged back to where I started. But I swore to myself, I wouldn't stay here forever. One day I would walk out of this house, and this time, I would never come back. I thought that after graduating from culinary school, my life would change. But no, I was still Zoe, the invisible one in my own family, now also their unpaid personal chef. Every day I worked long hours at a local restaurant. The pay was low, but at least I was gaining experience. My shifts stretched from early morning until late at night, but when I got home, my mother always had a list of chores waiting for me. You have a job now, but don't forget to clean the house. I would have laughed if it weren't so cruel. I had been doing chores since I was a child, while Ella never lifted a finger. Ella, the golden child, was still pampered like a princess. My parents spent money on her whenever she wanted something. When she entered her senior year of high school, my father pulled up to the house in a brand new white car, waving for Ella to come outside. My little girl deserves the best, he said, handing her the keys. I stood there, staring at the car gleaming under the sunlight, bitterness rising in my throat. When I was her age, I didn't even dream of having a car. I walked or borrowed an old bicycle to get to work. And even when I mentioned saving up for a used car, my parents only scoffed. With what money? You can barely afford rent, let alone a car. I had thought about moving out, but with my meager wages, affording an apartment alone was impossible. I tried saving, but my mother always found a way to take money from me. You live under this roof, so you have to contribute to the household expenses. It didn't matter that I cooked every meal and cleaned the house every day. I still had to hand over my earnings like some unwelcome tenant. That Christmas I decided, no matter what, I would do something to feel like I belonged in this family. I saved for months, trying to buy gifts for everyone. but when I saw the expensive presents Ella received from my parents, a brand new iPhone, a sparkling jewelry set, I knew I couldn't compete. So, I bought lottery tickets. Not the cheap scratch-offs, but tickets for the biggest jackpot of the year. I thought, maybe, just maybe, luck would smile on this family. On Christmas morning, I placed the envelopes on the table, each containing a ticket. When they opened them, their first reaction wasn't surprise or joy, it was mockery. Lottery tickets? My father raised an eyebrow. Are you serious? Zoe, couldn't you think of something more practical? My mother shook her head. What a waste. Ella scoffed, tossing her envelope aside. Wow, you're so broke you couldn't even buy a real present? They laughed. I sat there, frozen. My mother looked at me, her voice sickly sweet. Now that I think about it, since Zoe didn't get us anything meaningful, she shouldn't expect any gifts either. That sounds fair, right? They all nodded in agreement, as if it was the most logical thing in the world. I gripped the edge of the table, my nails digging into my palm. Then, without a word, I stood up and snatched the lottery tickets back from their hands. You know what? My voice trembled with anger. I'll keep these. Merry Christmas. Without waiting for their reaction, I stormed out of the house, feeling like I couldn't breathe. Christmas was supposed to be a time for family, yet I had never felt more alone. A few days after Christmas, I had almost forgotten about the lottery tickets I had snatched back from my family. I stuffed them into my coat pocket and tossed them onto a chair in my room. I had no reason to believe I would be lucky. But then, one morning during my break at the restaurant, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, thinking it was another spam call. But the voice on the other end left me frozen. Hello, is this Zoe Parker? This is Linda from the State Lottery Commission. I'm calling to inform you that you're holding a winning jackpot ticket. I stiffened. What did you just say? Your lottery ticket matched all the numbers from the Christmas draw. After taxes, your winnings amount to $1,750,000. The world spun around me. I blinked, gripping my phone tightly, trying to breathe evenly. $1,750,000. A number I had never even dared to dream of. For a moment, I couldn't believe it was real. But as Linda explained the process of claiming my winnings, I realized this was my chance. I had to tell someone, but who? I had no close friends, no one to share this moment with, and so, I made the stupidest mistake of my life. I went home and told my family. I walked into the kitchen, where they were having dinner. I won the lottery, I announced, my voice still shaking from the excitement. $1,750,000. Silence blanketed the room. My mother and father froze mid-bite. Ella put down her phone, eyes widening. Then suddenly, Ella shot up from her chair. Wait, that was the ticket you were going to give Mom. That means the money belongs to the family. A chill ran down my spine. No, you all didn't want them, remember? I took them back. My father nodded slowly, placing his fork down. Zoe, you're living under this roof. You should share with your family. This money could help us a lot. My mother chimed in, her voice unnaturally sweet. Sweetheart, do you even know how to manage that kind of money? Your father and I could hold on to it for you. I laughed bitterly. Don't pretend to care. We both know that if I give you that money, I'll never see a dime of it again. Ella clenched her fists. You're so selfish, you owe this family. You've been living off of us for years. Do you even think about who paid for food, rent, and all the bills? I let out a dry chuckle. I owe you? I did all the housework. I cooked. I handed over my paychecks to Mom, and now, just because I won the lottery, you suddenly expect me to repay a debt? My father's expression darkened. If you won't share, then you don't need to stay here. I stared at him. What do you mean? My mother stood up abruptly, crossing her arms, her eyes cold. If you're not going to give this family the money, then get out. Don't think you can live here without contributing. You have money now. Take care of yourself. We've let you stay here long enough. A wave of anger surged through me, but at the same time, another thought crept in. Relief. I looked into the eyes of each person in the room and realized they had never truly considered me part of this family. I took a deep breath. Fine. I'll leave. No one tried to stop me. No one showed any regret. I walked upstairs, stuffed my clothes into a bag, grabbed my documents and the winning ticket. As I stepped out the door, I paused for a moment. Thank you, I said, my voice steadier than ever. Thanks to you, I finally realize I don't belong here. Then I walked out, never looking back. I had no home, no family, but I had the most important thing. A chance to start over. I stepped out into the cold winter night, clutching my small bag with everything I owned. I had no clear plan, but one thing was certain: I would never come back. My first stop was the lottery office. I needed to ensure that the money was legally mine, that no one could take it from me. When I signed the check with $1,750,000 written on it, I knew this wasn't just money. This was my way out. But I wasn't going to waste it. I wasn't the kind of person to buy luxury cars or designer clothes just to prove something. I needed a plan. I rented a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, not too expensive, but enough to finally have my own space for the first time in my life. For weeks, I spent hours in front of my laptop, researching everything about opening a restaurant: real estate costs, business permits, food suppliers, staffing, marketing strategies. I knew that if I wanted to succeed, I couldn't rely on luck. I had to be strategic. After days of searching, I found an old building in the heart of downtown. It had once been a restaurant but had been abandoned for years. The air smelled of mold, and the floors were cracked, but I could see the potential. When I met the landlord, he chuckled. "You want to turn this place into a restaurant? Well, good luck with that." But I didn't need luck. I needed hard work. I hired contractors, renovated the space, chose every tile, every light fixture myself. I didn't just want a restaurant. I wanted it to be a home for people who loved food, a place where customers came not just for the meals, but for the experience. 3 months later, I stood in front of the gleaming glass doors of Zoe's Table. My first restaurant, my name on the sign. Opening day was the most terrifying moment of my life. I didn't know if anyone would come, if they would like my food. But when the first customer walked in, placed their order, and then smiled after the first bite, I knew I had done it. Day by day more customers arrived. People started talking about the small restaurant where the chef personally crafted every dish with passion. I created signature recipes, hosted food events, used social media to spread the word. From one small restaurant, Zoe's Table became a sensation. A year later, I opened my second location. 3 years later, I had my third. I, Zoe Parker, the girl once cast aside by her own family, was now the owner of a thriving restaurant chain. And I was just getting started. 3 years later, I was sitting in my office at Zoe's Table's third location, focused on reviewing financial reports, when my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Zoe?" A familiar voice rang through the line, sending a chill down my spine. "Ma." I hadn't heard her voice in 3 years. No messages, no calls, and now, out of nowhere, she was reaching out. Something must have happened. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice void of emotion. She sighed, as if burdened by some great trouble. "It's Ella. She's in trouble, Zoe. She lost her job, was caught stealing, and now no one will hire her. She's drowning in debt. The family is struggling. We need your help." I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath to suppress the wave of anger rising inside me. "And you thought of me. I thought you kicked me out. I left, and we have nothing to do with each other anymore." "Zoe, she's still your sister." My mother's voice softened, as if she was trying to tap into whatever compassion I had left. "She made mistakes, but she needs a chance to make things right. Can't you help?" I was silent. A part of me wanted to hang up immediately, but another part, the weaker, foolish part, still remembered the little girl Ella used to be, before she became entitled, selfish, and manipulative. I sighed. I can hire her, but she won't get special treatment. If she wants to work, she follows the rules like everyone else. Thank you, Zoe. I knew you were a good person. I let out a dry laugh. So now they needed me, the same girl they had thrown away. Ella started working at my restaurant as an HR manager. At first, she acted extremely diligent, arriving early, eagerly assisting employees, even working overtime when necessary. I started to think that maybe, just maybe, she truly wanted to change. But then, the whispers began. A few employees approached me, looking uneasy. Zoe, we've been hearing things. Ella had been quietly stirring up division among the staff. She told them I was underpaying them compared to the restaurant's revenue, that I was hoarding all the profits for myself, and that the business should have rightfully been hers, because I had stolen everything from the family. At first, I didn't want to believe it. But then, I started noticing the shift. Employees grew distant, some avoiding eye contact, others no longer as motivated as before. Then, one day, my head chef Marco pulled me aside. Zoe, you need to know this, he said in a low voice, his expression serious. Ella has been stirring up trouble. She's telling staff that if we go on strike, you'll have no choice but to raise wages or shut the place down. A slow burning fury ignited within me. I had given her a chance. I had let her back into my life. And she had stabbed me in the back. But I wasn't the old Zoe anymore. She was about to find out exactly who I had become. I clenched my fists. Don't worry, Marco, I know what to do. I thought Ella was just causing trouble, trying to damage my reputation. But then, late one evening, Jenna, my financial manager, walked into my office, her face pale. Zoe, we have a problem. I looked up from the ledger. What is it? We're missing $7,500 this month. The cash disappeared from the safe with no record of withdrawal. I felt a jolt of disbelief. Does anyone else know? I asked. Jenna shook her head. I only just discovered it after double-checking everything. But Zoe, only a few people have access to that safe. You, me, Marco, and... She trailed off, but I already knew what she was about to say. Ella. I couldn't jump to conclusions based on suspicion alone. But I also couldn't let this continue. If someone was stealing from me, stealing from my employees, they would be held accountable. So I quietly installed hidden security cameras around the safe and the accounting office. 4 days later, late at night while reviewing the reports, I got an alert from the surveillance system. Unusual activity detected in the accounting office. I clicked on the live feed, and there she was. Well, she slipped into the room, glancing around to make sure no one was watching, then opened the safe. Her hands moved quickly, stuffing wads of cash into her purse. I held my breath, watching the scene unfold. There was no mistake. I had given Ella a second chance. And she had betrayed me again. The next morning, I called the police. When they arrived at the restaurant and asked for Ella, she panicked, trying to act innocent. What? What are you doing? I didn't do anything. I crossed my arms, keeping my voice steady. I have evidence. The cameras recorded everything. Ella's face turned pale. You wouldn't do this to me, would you? I looked her straight in the eyes. I will. The police handcuffed Ella in the middle of the restaurant, in front of employees and customers. Less than an hour later, my parents barged into the restaurant, their faces filled with rage. Zoe, what the hell do you think you're doing? My father roared. You called the police on your own sister? My mother stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. She just made a mistake. Did you really have to be so cruel to your own sister? I let out a dry laugh. A mistake? The mistake was trusting you all again. My father stepped forward, pointing a finger at me. You'll regret this. If you don't drop the charges right now, you're no longer our daughter. For the first time in my life, I felt free hearing those words. I folded my arms and shrugged. Fine, just pretend I never existed. Like you did the day I walked out. They continued yelling, pleading, even threatening to sue me. But their words meant nothing. I stared at them with indifference. Eventually they stormed out, carrying with them the same hatred they had always had for me. But I didn't feel pain. I felt satisfaction. This time, the door I had once left open for them was shut forever. On the day of the trial, I arrived early. Not because I was eager for the hearing, but because I wanted to see if Ella still had the audacity to look me in the eye and lie. She walked into the courtroom looking flawless, her hair perfectly styled, her outfit professional, her eyes shimmering as if she were the true victim. When she took the witness stand, she sighed and shook her head regretfully. "I never intended to steal the money," Ella began, her voice trembling with faux remorse. I just borrowed it from my sister. I had every intention of paying it back, but before I could, she called the police. I never thought she would do this to her own family." I clenched my fists but remained silent. I had been preparing for this moment. Then, the prosecutor stood up. "Miss Parker, are you aware that this isn't the first time you've been accused of theft?" Ella's face paled. I don't know what you're talking about." The courtroom doors opened and a middle-aged man walked in. I recognized him instantly. Ella's former boss. He stood before the jury and detailed everything Ella had done at his company. How she had stolen money and, when caught, falsely accused him of sexual harassment to escape consequences. The courtroom buzzed with shock. Ella's eyes widened. For the first time in her life, she had no lie to cover herself. The prosecutor then played an audio recording of former employees confirming that Ella had fabricated the allegations to save herself. And when the judge delivered the verdict, Ella was officially found guilty of theft and fraud. I watched as the officers handcuffed her again. She sobbed, begging, pleading, but no one responded. Then she turned to me, her eyes filled with pure hatred. "You'll regret this, Zoe," she hissed. "You stole my life." I met her gaze one last time. "No, Ella, you destroyed your own life." After that day, I never contacted them again. They called me a few times, to blame me, to beg, but I never answered. They no longer had any ties to me. I went back to my life, focused on expanding my restaurant business. 3 years later, Zoe's Table had 5 locations across the state, becoming a well-known culinary brand. But more importantly, I was no longer alone. Marco, Jenna, and my loyal employees were not just colleagues, they were my family. A family built not on blood, but on respect, loyalty, and real love. I had once been Zoe, the forgotten girl, the overlooked one, the outcast. But now, I was Zoe Parker, the woman who built her own future and would never let anyone take it from her again. Zoe's story is not just a personal journey, it's a reflection of a harsh reality. Many people are undervalued and taken advantage of by their own families, yet they still rise above it. This story is a reminder that family isn't always a place of love and safety, and sometimes, cutting ties with toxic relationships is the only way to find true self-worth. Success isn't about luck, it's about perseverance, determination, and believing in yourself. Zoe proves that your past doesn't define your future, you do. What do you think of Zoe's story? Have you ever faced a similar situation or known someone who had to fight for their own worth? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow this channel for more powerful real-life stories about family and life.